Is that the missus?
It's my sister.
Home to see the family.
Yeah, ish.
Okay.
Not really.
My car's here.
If you need a restaurant recommendation, I don't know. Do you want to? We don't have to.
No, give me your phone.
Brett, I guess I want to start with you and the origins of this movie. What was the starting point for you? And talk a little bit about the kind of early evolution of the screenplay.
Well, I lost my mom, and then different than the movie, I basically just buried for like 10 years what I was feeling and what I went through. And then my wife said, you should go talk to a therapist. And then I started to write down our conversations, the actual sessions, and then that became Ren and Zoe. I sort of took the therapy session and took the real life plot and did sort of wish fulfillment. So just playing that through, and then that became the script.
Mm-hmm. And so in the writing process for something like that, how tricky is it to figure out, or is it trickier to figure out what's working objectively when it is so close to you and it's sort of this weird hybrid of personal experience, but you're turning it into fiction?
I mean, the first time I wrote it, I thought it was terrible. And I gave it to my wife, and she's like, this is actually pretty good. You know, working with Robert, going through the script, you know, he was able to give that, the context of what's working, what's not working, how to shape things. I tend to like dramatically overwrite scenes. Robert knows this. They probably know because they've had to memorize like 17-page, scenes. But the through line was, just trying to make sure that Ren, the character, we were paying attention to his evolution, his character growth, his personal journey, and then having the world pull what he needed out of him in each moment.
So, Robert, how did the script come to you, and what was your initial response that made you want to make the movie?
I had directed other features, and Brett had seen other films I'd worked on, and liked them enough to want to send me the script. And I had a friend who is like a bit of a snob, like a reading snob. And he was like, I read this amazing script, you have to read it. I read it that night, I loved it. Like Brett, my father passed away of a similar experience. And so I connected to the material. I felt, I found myself sort of in this character. Yeah, I was very appreciative of the material. The fun for me, I love comedy and I love weightier scenes, heavier scenes. So the fun of it for me was just trying to help balance it throughout the edit process and, and make it all kind of work. And work with these amazing, awesome people on the stage with us today.
Well, I guess, Alex and Brittany, I'd ask you both the same question about your initial response to the script. I mean, when did it come to you, and what did you initially respond to?
My agent sent it to me, very typical actor thing. But my mom is a 2-time breast cancer survivor, and this story really struck me in the what if of it. I think it's true that when one of your family members, especially a parent or a sibling or a child, goes through something like this, the whole family experiences it in such a real, deep, and visceral way. And in my family, we have utilized comedy as a way to cope with that in such a insane way. I mean, we laugh way too much in the most inappropriate moments, and I think that helps to heal. And so when I read the script, I saw the highs, the lows, the beauty of it. It jumped off the page. It wasn't just black and white, and I was like, okay, this is something that I really want to be a part of. And I love bringing light into naturally dark spaces because I think it's important as human beings to kind of see both sides of that coin.
I read it. My agent sent it to me and said, you have to read this today. And I was a good girl, and I did. And I basically said yes that day. Because I hadn't read something where I cried. I read it so quickly. It was such an easy read. There was such cadence to Brett's writing. I was going through a different type of grief. I was going through a divorce, and that's also grief. And I really wanted to make sure that I could do something and channel the fact that I really understood the character of Lee and how you have to compartmentalize and how you have to sometimes plan things and organize things in your head. And I always tell my parents, like, I need to just put it in a box and put it away because I need to deal with it in increments. And I felt like the character of Lee was really doing that within the story. And so I always find that scripts come to me in moments where I need to also understand something about myself. And so this was no exception. So I loved it.
Doing an independent film where, on the one hand, you've got limited resources in terms of time and money and things like that, but it also sometimes gives you opportunities to do things that are more personal. I mean, what for you are the sort of, I guess, pros and cons or pleasures and challenges of making a movie like this?
I think for me, it was the personal relationships. Everyone had something connective to the story. And I think that being with Brett on set and having him sort of guide the fact that he wrote it and Robert had such a personal take on it as well was, I think with independent movies, you really get that sense where everyone is guerrilla filmmaking, doing it for the love of it. And I love that interaction because you feel like you're really collectively creating something special with less time than you want. But it's still why you do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a testament to both of you because you created such a beautiful story that really made a lot of sense, which helps us as actors. And then you created the space in which we could be creative. So sometimes it doesn't even necessarily feel like a time. It's like, yeah, we only have so much time to get this scene, so many setups, so many takes. But it's about creating that energy on set where you can walk in and just be like, okay, let's play. And I really felt like every day I went to set, I was playing. And I think you made a space that allowed us to kind of grow and encompass. And one of my most distinct memories on this job was like, okay, we have so much to get through, especially with the scene with the wake. And then Nick walks on set and he gives that powerful speech. And I remember I was like, I wanted to clap right after he had finished. I was like, I was looking around because I was like, oh yeah, I'm at work, you know what I mean? But I think it's a true testament to the space and the script that was created that allowed for a lot of beautiful work to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the performances across the board were great, including a lot of people who are not here today. And I was curious, Robert, like what kind of environment, I mean, Alex kind of touched on it, but from your point of view, what kind of environment do you try to create on set that's going to help facilitate the actor's best work?
Well, I mean, my mom is an actress, and she's awesome. And I wish she was here with us, hanging out with everybody, because she's a joy. So, I grew up with somebody who was always like in character every morning and just trying scenes out with me when I didn't understand I was in a scene. So that kind of gets you comfortable with, what that feeling is to be collaborating in that environment. I want everybody to really be a part of this and enjoy the experience. And I just want everybody to feel comfortable and trust in what we're doing. So it's just a lot of checking in with everybody to make sure everybody's feeling good. It's sort of like hosting a party. I like hosting parties, and I like checking. You deplete all of your battery power at a party. You're like can't talk to anybody really, but you just kind of make everybody feel comfortable to be there, and you make sure everything is in the right place. You kind of you prep it, and then you kind of send it off. So I sort of that feeling of family, feeling of connection. I've made a lot of independent films, and I love them so much. I like the craziness of not having time. Most importantly, if everybody's prepared, you can really get a lot done. If everybody really has a plan. It's hard and it's happened before where someone's sort of technique is that they just don't plan, and then it's really challenging. And it does everyone a disservice. Like if you really want time, if you come, the more prepared you are, the more you can get more out. When we get to this point where we're actually shooting, so many decisions have been made, and hopefully they've been the right ones that you really have to kind of just trust where you are. It all defines the film we end up making, and I think we just have to kind of accept all those wonderful things that happen along the way. But yeah, I mean, I really do love so much, the collaborative side of working with actors and just being a part of it. And I've acted in films. I think the hardest thing for me whenever I've acted in a film was not knowing what I'm doing. Like I just don't know where the camera is and what lens are we on and what am I doing. So I think just being able to explain what we're doing very clearly, I think is very supportive and helpful to get going. So anyway.
And Brett, how did you see your role on set, and what kinds of conversations were you having with the actors?
It's a good question. I honestly didn't. I really wanted Robert to really steer the ship. So there wasn't. It was not me sitting there being like, this is supposed to be this and this is supposed to be that. That's the trust that I had in Robert to step in and do his thing. And it was cool because there are some moments, and it was my first script that was produced, where you write it and you think this is perfect, and you get on set and it completely falls apart. And then the cool thing is having actors step in and say, let's figure out how to make this work. I remember there was a day we were at like the airport scene, and Zoe and Ren, like that, there was like a dialogue, a back and forth between them. Scene didn't really work. And I remember Alex and Nick, kind of like, you guys were like coming up on the spot of like, how do we take this and how do we make it work? And Robert was like crafting it. And so watching that process was incredibly educational for me.
We were in an airport too. We had no time. We were in an
no
airport.
time. And it was like
starting to rain.
Yeah.
We had
The rain worked.
Rain really helped.
Rain plays.
Had there been no rain, we would have not been in Cleveland.
Yeah,
for
it
a
was
second.
#1 on the call sheet that day, for sure. But that's the thing about it, right? It's the collaboration, and I think that so much brilliance can come out of that time crunch where it's like, oh, I don't know, and then you get something natural, and Nick's fumbling over his words, and I'm being like the cool chick who's like, don't worry, that's kind of hot, and like, I think that there's so much relatability that comes into that because life isn't scripted, and so when you're able to capture that and have that, and you set the scene, and we know what we're doing, and we've got the tone and energy, we're able to play on the day and be like, maybe it would be more so like this or more so like that. And you get that on indie films specifically because even though you don't have that much time, you still have the time to be creative.
Well, I thought you did a really beautiful job. It's a really great movie, and I really appreciate all of you taking the time to come out and talk to me about it. So thank you.
Tell your friends, and thank you for being here so much.
Heck yeah.
Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you.
And his brother, Oscar.